one time we were talking and you were telling me how, I don't know if these are them, but a lot of people don't understand what it means. And you were telling me the stories, and like there's different gangs or different people or different artists that it's their signature and it means something. Like, you remember the Toys Must Die? You were explaining all these to me. And do they still do that, or they just?
Yeah, they still do that. Well, Toys Must Die is like my own crew. That's my own group. I mean, I'm 27 now. I mean, what do I look like hanging around with a whole bunch of guys and say, hey, I'm in a crew, I got my leather jacket? I mean, it's time to grow up. I really don't do that.
But now somebody else who does walls for a living, huh? But how do you feel about graffiti, Bob?
Well, I never painted a dog.
Sounds exciting.
I don't know if I'm like, you know.
Dogs do travel.
I like some of it. You know, I have the same problem with it that he has, which is people just going around writing all over people's property or just, you know, running wild. But, you know.
You ask for your walls.
Actually, I kind of like graffiti better before it became, like, this, like, stylized, you know, I mean, graffiti goes back to hieroglyphics, right? It's the oldest art form in the world. So, you know.
That's right, they discovered graffiti in Pompeii.
Yeah, so.
A lot of history on it.
You know, I like the whole idea of public art. I like what Mitch does with the walls, you know, now with the big mural pictures and
I think that's the loss. I mean, we have great works of art here, but they're not in public spaces anymore. So hopefully you can get your walls, honest walls.
Actually, I just got graffitied.
Yeah.
Down at the mills.
War was declared on his
graffiti.
piece.
I'm involved in the graffiti.
Yeah,
right
what
now.
happened? Tell us about that. First, describe the piece, because I really love that, and maybe we can jointly tell the story about trying to save it in the Historic Preservation Commission, and then.
I did a piece down where Don lives, and actually
in the historic district. Yeah.
All three of the other members of the panel here live in the artist housing, which is they started low-income artist housing in Paterson. To try and, you know, they had a whole gentrification problem, you know, anyway, this whole thing. Make a long story short, I ended up on the blacklist somehow, which I really can't figure that out exactly to this day, but, yeah, well, let's just leave that one off.
Gillianism, he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told him he could name names, it's all right.
Yeah, I don't want to name names on tape because we all may end up in court someday in the future, and I'm very serious about all this, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I had the feds in on that. I mean, it's just ridiculous, man. These people are like over art, you know. First thing I think about art is we should get rid of all grant connections to art, okay? And we should go back to like a Darwinist natural selection of artists. You know, if you're tough enough to make it or you got the heart to make it, because that money, man, it just, the buzzards start coming in, you know, and then you got the wrong people running the wrong things the wrong way. And nothing's really getting done, and it's a shame. But it's just a personal So I figured, you know, like the best thing to do is to do something creative, you know, to hit them in a way that they can't deal with it. So I put a mural right in the parking lot of the artist housing complex, which is big. It's about 15 feet high.
Well, it's the Phoenix Mill.
Yeah. So it's about like 15 feet high by about 25 feet wide.
Oh, you're talking about the wall.
Yeah, the wall
is big.
Yeah, so I did
high visibility.
some boats on an ocean, because all the murals that I've been doing, I decided early off that I wasn't going to do political murals, which, you know, I respect all kinds of, you know, art and murals and that, but for me to get up there and start painting pictures of Chairman Mao or LaRoche or, you know, whatever, and trying to make, you know, like Rivera and all of that, you know, there's no point in it. So I decided what I was going to do is my statement was going to be an ecological statement. So we painted a desert right next to my house in a factory section with some cactus and a sunset, which has been up since 1984 and hasn't been written on once, even though they've like tagged everything all around it, which is great. And I did down at the mills, I did 2 boats, wind-powered boats coming across the ocean, just like with the blue and a very Monet kind of sky. And we called it Wooden Ships, and it's based on the song by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Wooden ships, free and easy, the way it's supposed to be, that type of thing. And it's been up since '86, and it finally got tagged not too long ago.
Just almost the first year that the Preservation Commission was operating, we had a project that came before us to demolish that garage the wall is on, and you know, do some some housing there. And it was not something we could really resist. First of all, we were a startup commission. We didn't want to give the impression of trying to save every brick in the historic district. And this was really a sort of a derelict old garage. And the guy wanted to put up good housing. So we had to, well, I never gave in. I wanted that garage to stay up. I was really hardline on because I wanted to save that mural. I said, can we at least save that wall, shave it off, and push down the garage behind it? I mean, I just, and it was a first challenge for the commission, actually, to deal with a piece of public art. We had dealt with buildings, we dealt with parking lots, we dealt with what have you, but we never had dealt with a piece of public art. And we haven't had to deal with it again, and I'm sort of hoping we will, so that we can sort of get our skills in how to deal with public monuments. The only thing that has come up like that is the Lucas Stella statue in Federici Park, and the Italian Circle that put up the Lucas Stella statue just avoids the Historic Preservation Commission like the plague. But anyway, there it was, and we agreed that we'd photograph it and protect it, and at least the memory of it, and if the guy had to take it down, he would take it down. And Bob even appeared before the commission to talk about it and so on.
That was kind of
And the garage is still up. The housing was never built. The project got lost in recession economics,
Actually,
I guess.
I don't know if they can zoom in that tight.
And maybe you can show a picture of it. And I wrote about it in the newspaper, and it was on the front page of the Herald and News one day, and I wrote a letter to the press saying that there it was, it had been there for years, and nobody had touched it. And it was just, what is it, within the last 2 months, Bob, that it was tagged?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even good, you know, it was just...
Well, it says graffiti wore it, and they just kind of like...
Right.
Sort of
That's
like
really
one
sad.
huge
We got one other one here.
Yeah.
spinning around the bow.
This is,
And my comment in the press was, people do respect public art. That you know,
They appreciate it.
vandalism. I mean, the sort of
By my
random
house.
vandalism that we associate with graffiti doesn't happen. That when there is a really nice piece of public art, people do respect it. I saw for how many years Tony Kanger's mural over the falls there remained absolutely untouched, and people would lean down over the edge of that, you know, the overlook, and maybe write their names in the top of it or something like that. But do you remember this mural?
Yeah.
I had.
And then you know who vandalized it? The city of Paterson. They came with their trucks and painted the damn thing
They took the
over.
whole thing over.
well, they did
Oh, boy,
that
I
to a
thought that was
bunch of
the end of
Mitch's
the-
murals.
I had 2 murals down there. They
Yeah.
took mine off.
They
Not
took
only
yours
that,
off
but
too?
those ones over on Grant Street that they just like showed up, and it was
Yeah.
they were on private property during the graffiti war. They just had a truck roll up with a bunch of guys one day, and they
Took my
like
mural off.
took it off. The store owner came out. He's like, hey, look, you want this citation, and this citation?
Oh my God.
Then they started. Then they like got to this point where they were going to destroy, like, you know, and not anymore what's graffiti and what's not, and who's doing this and who's not. They were just going to take down every mural in Paterson, which I had to appear before.
When was this?
You're talking about
Vince Cortez and his
1985.
buddies on the.
85 and 86.
Don was through that meeting. Actually, I was hard pressed to keep my hands to myself at the end of
There's
that
something
night.
else coming back up again.
People in suits just got
Yeah.
an attitude.
No, they want to start it again.
Over my dead
Sure,
body.
because the thing is, they
got
don't
those
paint,
ties,
and they're afraid of getting paint on their clothes, and it starts with that stigma, and they develop a whole defense, and they go to war over that defense, and that's the kind of thing you're dealing with. You're dealing with a psychological stigma that builds to defend itself, and it will go to any length to protect itself from being found out.
Well, I'd like to tell my story a little bit about, you know, ending up in Paterson. I grew up in Hawthorne. I was actually born in Paterson at St. Joe's, and we lived in Pompton Lakes at the time. I was there till I was 4. Then we moved to Hawthorne. I grew up in a very suburban, white, you know, sort of that type of thing. And then when I was in my freshman year, we moved to Paterson, and all of a sudden I got thrown into Eastside High School, which I think was 3% white at the time.
That'll do it.
And I loved it. You know, it was like Alice in Wonderland all of a sudden. It was great. No, I'm serious, you know. You didn't need drugs in that place. It was and the teachers really appreciated it. I mean, as far as giving artistic leeway, they had, you know, there wasn't all that, like, crap about people being bored and having nothing to do but bust your chops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like a war zone. So if you were a creative kid and you had something going, they were more than willing to give you leeway to do it. And we'd spend all our time in the video lab or up in the art room. I take study as art, I take art as art, I take lunch as art, and I'd spend most of the rest of the day. And then most of my teachers that needed something done in the video lab, they'd have us like running a sign. So in a way, it was, you know, that opening up, it was a great thing. It was a really great experience. And I really never dealt with that. I was born in Paterson until a few years ago, and I got a studio downtown Paterson, which is right near the mills, which is kind of funny because if you come out of, there's one mill, there's the Phoenix, and then it's a one-way, and it kind of turns down onto Mill Street, and there's the second mill. Then there's another one-way coming back up, which leads to the Colt building, where all these artists ended up. Then there's a one-way over from there that leads back to the one-way down to the mill. So I used to call it the Loop. And there's just this like little circle, and there's all these artists around in this circle.
Yeah.
And Chauncey Street, the Cappuccino was right there, and we used to go down and have the Cappuccino. I remember Don did a sketch of somebody one time, a couple of years ago. He did a really nice sketch. It was really loose style. And I'm looking at him going, wow, that looks like Michelangelo. Don says, no, it's his cousin. And I'm like, I thought he's like, about half an hour later, Joe Ruffalo comes in, and he's like looking through the book. He's like, oh, that's Michelangelo's cousin, Antonio. Like, oh, yeah, I get it now.
That's a great Paterson story,
Yeah,
dude.
Octavio's son is Michelangelo.
It's fun.
And his other son's name is Maximiliano. And the daughter has a very picturesque name, too. She's a very attractive girl. She works in the deli. Yeah.
I know why. I know why his mural got vandalized.
You do? Tell us about
What
it.
happened was that I told the city I've been helping the mayor, helping the kids out for the past 7 years. I never got anything back for return, which I was just using up my own personal time. All I wanted was the right recognition as an artist, period. Which I'm getting. I get walls anytime. People pay me $250, $300 for a mural, depending the size of the wall. If they buy the paint, then I gotta compromise that they bought the paint and I just charge for my work. I had different murals all over sections of Paterson. I probably was getting too much press in the newspapers. And a certain individual, I think he's going up for re-election, so he wanted to make a big issue about graffiti. So I said, I know what this guy wants. But I said, push comes to shove, before the heat comes down, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna retire painting murals on a wall.
Did you see that in the paper?
Yes, I did.
So what happened was, I wanted to hibernate for a while. It's been about 4 months, but while the city has been thinking that I quit, that I actually stopped, that I actually haven't been doing it anymore, I've been home and I've been doing these right here, which these here are brand new. And they don't know that I got something kicking in for next month. And I'm gonna make them flip backwards, because in 1993, I'm coming back out hot. So what happened was, the kids, the graffiti artists themselves, they knew, since I had the loops with the mayor, with the council members, with the police officers and everybody, they knew that I was the only guy that can get the walls legitimized for them to actually paint. Otherwise, the walls, they cannot do the wall unless they were to talk to me first. So since I knew the city, a couple of people were playing games with me, and the kids were playing games with me, I said, if I quit, now the city's gonna need me, because if they vandalize these walls, they're gonna need the help, and I'm not gonna be around. That's number one. And if I stop, these kids are gonna need me, because they can't paint no more murals. So that's what I did. What happened was, the kids got mad, and they went and started vandalizing all my murals by taking paint and splashing them all over like the parking lot, the one that I had this gone. So I guess that's why they went and they vandalized your mural, because your mural was right next to my mural.
Actually, they're on a corner to each other.
His mural was here and mine is here. His hasn't been touched for, I'm talking about, years.
Yeah.
I have painted 3 murals on that wall
I was
already,
gonna say.
and he only had his one and never got vandalized. And that's what happened. But I can tell you when you can touch it up, because I'm gonna.
Okay,
I'm planning on doing it
fair
all.
enough.
Problem.
Fair enough. Let's throw this open to some questions out there in TV land. I'm sure you've got the picture of who these folks are and
Character.
and what they like to do and what they like to do. Maybe you want to find out some more. We'll give you a microphone. You can ask a question. Come on, folks. Come on, you learned so much about Paterson and the uses of its public space for public history. Why don't you ask them about that?
No one's running in their
Does
minds.
Paterson's history mean anything to you? The kind of history that's been used for the bicentennial as part of its this sort of it's the city's story. Does that relate to you? Do you
Well,
relate
I
to
know
it
what
in any
to
way?
do here. Wait. Today on Oprah, artists with weird sexual kinks. Do you
Yes.
have any questions from the audience?
Sorry, I guess
I
this
definitely know
isn't
what's running in their minds. I
this-
guarantee you I know what it is.
this isn't controversial enough. You know, you can't get that lady in the back with the
You're probably saying, do we
big
have an
hair.
air conditioner in here?
yeah.
Are you saying-
It's not so hot out there.
Come on. Well, I put a question to you now, even if they didn't.
Well,
What about that?
what was the question?
The question was, we've had a whole year now of Paterson Bicentennial.
Right.
And this is a question that's come up a couple of times. Did somebody say something? Whose history is it anyway? Does the history of Paterson that's been framed to tell the story of Paterson mean anything to you? Are you part of it? Do you feel as though you're engaged in some kind of making the future
Well, you know,
that people are going to share?
I have like mixed feelings about that. Like, I do it, and it bothers me sort of when other people do it, but I do it. You know, I went out to New Mexico 2 years ago, the first time I went out, and I met a bunch of people, and they'd be asking me where I was from, and I'm like, Paterson, New Jersey, the first Colt revolvers, the first airplane engines, the first locomotives, the first submarines, you know, first planned industrial city in the New World, except maybe Massachusetts, you know. But it's just, it's like a real, it's like America, all that, the West, it's like like Paterson was the outlet for that. All those things, the trains, the guns, you know, all the things that made that whole, you know. It's like Paterson, it all sort of started there. Hamilton, that whole thing with Byron. I was just talking to some LaRoche supporters killing some time outside a post office, and their whole thing with Hamilton, and they're getting back into Byron. It's a really key place to understanding a lot. But then everything is. You know, like you can get hung up on it too. It's very interesting, and it's a great place to be from, a great place to take with you places. And I learned a lot there on the street. You know, I learned how to survive and all that. But
You know what I think one of the problems is? It's not really reciprocal. See,
Exactly.
like the thing is, like for instance, they don't come to Paterson, right? You don't come down to Paterson, and really, you don't care about people from Paterson coming to Wayne or Oakland or Ridgewood or where you're from. So there's this strange kind of isolation that we have, you know, about I don't know, somehow hospitality has got to be made in a very secret kind of way, because we don't want too many people coming and crowding us.